welcome. My name is Serena. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at Lehigh University, and I'm here tonight joined by a few of my current students who are going to talk to you a little bit about the graduate application process. The reason we chose to host this webinar is because this process of applying to graduate school can be a little bit murky. And for students who may be coming from primarily undergraduate institutions or who may be applying from international institutions, learning a little bit more about our timelines, about whether or not you should even decide to go to graduate school immediately, right? These are all decisions that you're probably grappling with as a student considering this next step in your career path. So the first thing that I'd like to do is, if you don't mind, just opening up the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, right? So I'm here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is where Lehigh is located. It's very convenient. It's located somewhere between Philadelphia and New York City. Everybody talks about that, but it is quite true. We're about an hour from Philadelphia, about an hour and a half from New York City, pretty convenient to at least 3 major international airports. So we've got Chandler, Arizona. Where are other people joining us from? Baltimore. Kansas City, Louisiana. I got excited at Kansas City because I'm from Kansas. So, right, Bethlehem, of course. All right, quite a few people joining from in and around Lehigh's campus, as well as lots of other places. So we do also have someone joining us from Nigeria. I'm not even sure what time it is right now in Nigeria, so I want to put out a special thank you to you, because I'm guessing it is not a very good time to be sitting in a webinar. All right, so let's get started. So 1 out of every 3 engineering undergraduate students will immediately start graduate school after finishing a bachelor's degree. Right, that's a huge number of students. And just in the US alone, on an annual basis, we confer 80,000 bachelor's degrees in engineering, 44,000 master's degrees, and around 10,000 PhDs. And making that decision, right, to move from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree or to a PhD is a really big decision with lots of implications for your future career trajectory, as well as your future career options. But because you're sitting here this evening, I'm assuming that this is a decision that you are considering making, if not now, potentially in the future. But another thing to mention is that not all students who go on to a graduate career will join a traditional engineering program, right? We have lots of students who will do MBAs, who will go on to law school, who will go on to medical school. Those are a different conversation than we're going to have this evening, right? So tonight's conversation is around Masters of Science programs related to engineering, Masters of Engineering programs, and kind of what the difference between those two might be, as well as PhD programs, again, related to the STEM fields. But there are also other opportunities to expand your knowledge without necessarily committing to a full degree as a master's student or as a PhD student. And those lie in certificate programs, as well as other types of interdisciplinary opportunities to expand your knowledge base without going for a full degree. So, Masters of Science, Masters of Engineering. You're going to see a lot of these different types of designations thrown around, no matter what university you happen to be looking at. So a Master's of Science traditionally was a research-based master's. It's largely shifted now to include both research as well as non-research based options. But It is typically going to be about 30 credits. Some universities have slightly different credit styles than Lehigh, but 30 is about an average. And it can be research or it can be course-based. Typically, you'll write something that looks like a thesis, but that thesis could be related to an industrial project or something else that you are doing while studying for your degree. There are also Masters of Engineering programs. These have traditionally been course-based only. They may have project work associated with the courses, but they typically are also going to be roughly 30 credits. Many of them are structured to be completed in about a year, potentially longer, depending on, again, the type of path that you want to take, and are oftentimes a distinct degree from a Master's of Science degree. So what the differences are between the two: research, thesis-based versus non-research. But again, now those lines are blurred rather heavily between the types of programs that exist. So my best advice to all students who are thinking about one of those types of programs is to ask. You're going to hear that a lot tonight. Connect with the program that you're interested in. I cannot stress that enough. It's going to help you answer all the questions that you might have, but it's also going to let them remember who you are. And in the sea of applications that a university will receive for different graduate programs, having that slight edge of a program having interacted with you is really important. Now, a PhD is a research-based program. You will walk out of your PhD having completed a dissertation. Typically, PhD programs are 72 credits, again, give or take, depending on what institution you are at, but the bulk of those credits are actually focused on your research. You will take classes. In fact, a couple of the students who are joining us tonight are studying for exams in classes that they happen to be taking right now, but a PhD is about your research. So those are kind of the three different styles of programs. Now, the application process for each of those different programs is largely similar, but can have its distinctions, especially as you move from a master's program into a PhD program. But one of the main questions that I hear a lot of students talking about at this stage is, should I go? And should I go now or should I go later? This is one of the reasons we host this particular webinar. I fell into the camp of, I chose to go to graduate school later. Not because I didn't, well, no, it was largely because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I also didn't really understand the graduate school application process. So I ended up waiting a couple of years. But when you think about what that graduate program could offer you, right, what that will bring you in terms of your career trajectory, and really what your personal goals are as a student. Are you looking to transition from acquisition of knowledge to mastery and creation of knowledge? Because that is the distinction between a student who has a bachelor's degree and a student who has an advanced degree, where mastery of knowledge is related to master's programs and creation of new knowledge is related to PhD programs. But an advanced degree also brings you a set of credentials. And while that set of credentials may not be necessary for your first job out of college, it may be necessary for you to advance your career at a faster pace than a peer who has a bachelor's degree. But also, I find a lot of students are pursuing graduate degrees because they really want to expand their knowledge base, whether it be to dive deeper into their chosen bachelor's degree field of study, like mechanical engineering, or a transition into a different field that is complementary to their original field of study that will advance their opportunities in the workforce. So I've had students do bachelor's degrees in material science as an example, to then go on and do a master's degree in mechanical engineering or environmental engineering because they wanted to expand that knowledge base. And that set them up to do a different type of job than they would have had just graduating with their bachelor's degree. So, some really good reasons to pursue it now rather than later. Your study skills are still going to be pretty sharp leaving your undergraduate degree. This is key because graduate courses in engineering can be really difficult. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying they can be hard. They are an advanced level of knowledge. So when your study skills are sharp, it may be slightly easier to move into those types of programs because you haven't yet forgotten all of the math you learned in the previous 4 years. You may also just have fewer obligations at this stage in your life. And for some of you, that may be a real consideration as you think about starting a family or moving into, again, the next phase of adulthood. And some occupations actually require an advanced degree, even for entry-level positions. And so it may not be an option in your particular field of study for you to wait while you, again, move into the next stage of your career. So, reasons to wait, right? You might be able to refine your career goals. If you are a student and you're just not 100% sure what it is you want to do, or even what field you might want to pursue your advanced degree in, that may be a good reason to test the waters of employment for a little while before you take that next step in education. Not the only reason, but potentially a reason. You may also increase your maturity level as you go out and have your first job, giving you a different perspective on graduate school when you come back into a program. Plus, in some cases, especially for master's degrees, your employer may cover your expenses. And for master's programs that are largely unfunded by institutions, this may be really key in your pursuit of an advanced degree. Now, some graduate programs actually do require you to have work experience. You'll find this a lot in MBA programs where they're looking for a certain number of years of work experience prior to entering the program. Again, not all MBA programs, but there are a few out there. In addition, you could potentially improve your chances of getting into the top program if you maybe weren't the best student as an undergraduate. Having those couple of years of work experience may set you apart from other students who don't have, again, that increased level of maturity and may help you overcome possibly a less than stellar undergraduate record. Okay, so again, let's say that you're sitting there thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm going to graduate school. Just stop talking about whether or not I should go now or wait. Okay, so you've decided you want to go. The next question is where? And I've been hopefully that you're all here tonight. Lehigh is on your list, but I also know that many of you are looking at lots of different possible schools. And it's not just about the school that you choose. It's also about the program. It's about whether or not it aligns with your interests, whether or not there's a good match between what you want to learn and what you can learn within that program of study. So for master's programs, you want to look for a program that's going to allow you to take courses above and beyond what you've been able to do as an undergraduate. For PhD programs, the most important piece of a PhD alignment with your interests is going to be in that mentor match. Some PhD programs will offer you the opportunity to do rotations in different labs. These types of programs allow you to select your mentor after you've selected the school. This can be really valuable if you're not 100% sure the type of research that you want to do, but rather want to explore your options in your first year of graduate study. Other PhD programs, you will be matched with a mentor from day one. And many of the programs at Lehigh are very similar to this. Not all. We do have a few programs that offer rotation-based opportunities. But that match with your mentor is a key element of a PhD program's success. You need to have a work alignment with your mentor. You need to have a philosophical alignment with your mentor, because that mentor is the person that you're going to be working the most closely with for the next 4 to 5 to possibly, hopefully not, but 6 years. Now, the prestige of the institution obviously matters. And for many students who are considering that next step, you're looking at international rankings, you're looking at US News and World Report rankings, and you're trying to decide if that institution is the best fit for you with respect to where it lies in the prestige compared to your undergraduate institution. It matters. And it matters maybe slightly less than who your mentor is. In fact, I would say maybe not even slightly, I would say probably a lot less than who your research mentor is. But it does matter when you go on to, again, after your PhD, and you're looking at jobs in the academic sector or in the government lab or industry sector. Location, where someplace is, also matters. I've had many students who wanted to stay very close to home to do their PhD. And so they were looking at a small handful of possible institutions, and that's fine. If that is your life goal, is to stay close to your family, or if it's something that's just important to you right now, by all means, look to find the institutions that are close to you that allow you to pursue the path that you want to be on. I went to Purdue for my PhD, both my master's and my PhD. And the reason I chose Purdue was a few reasons. One, it was the only suggestion I got from my advisor. They told me to apply to Purdue. So I applied to Purdue. But also, Purdue happened to be in a location that was kind of close to family, but also not close to anything. You literally could do nothing in that town except for study for your PhD. And I didn't need distraction. I just wanted to finish and be done with school. So it was a perfect location for me. Plus, my mentor was amazing. Another question that may come up is going to be funding. Right? For PhD programs, funding should be part of your offer. If it's not, I would question the validity of the offer, but please get in touch with the department before you say no to an offer of admission, because it may be that funding letters come after admissions letters. For master's programs, funding is less of a secure option. Some programs will offer assistantships, others will not. It never hurts to ask what type of funding can be made available if you're studying for a master's degree. But another really important piece of all of this is going to be, how successful are the alumni coming from that institution? And alumni matter because alumni help build your network. And in fact, is one of the, I think, most powerful strengths of Lehigh University is that our alumni are not only very successful, but they're also very loyal to Lehigh and to future Lehigh students. And so you leave Lehigh with this incredible network of alumni who want to see you succeed. So look at alumni success. And we just had a question that popped into the chat, and I'm happy that you're using the chat for questions. That's awesome. Let's keep doing that. Right. So how does funding work for graduate school? Is it based on work and assistantships, merit, or financial need? So all of those, but for a PhD program, it is based on work and different types of assistantships. So there are fellowships that some institutions have money to support PhD students through fellowship programs. There are assistantships, which could be a graduate research assistantship or a graduate teaching assistantship. These appointments for PhD students will come with a stipend. It's in essence a living wage, and tuition credits. You may have to pay a few fees related to facilities. Right now, there's a lot of universities with health and wellness fees, but those fees sometimes are on the student to cover. For master's programs, there are oftentimes merit-based scholarships that you can pursue. There are also financial need-based options that university financial aid offices can help you navigate. There are also options for work in many programs across the nation where you can be a TA or be a research assistant and receive some compensation and potentially even tuition credits. It's something that is somewhat nuanced at different programs. Even sometimes within an institution, there are going to be nuances to how master's students receive funding. So please, again, get in touch with the program and ask these types of questions that are specific to programs that you are interested in. All right, so here's the process. Okay, so there's a lot of steps to this, and I don't want anyone to panic if you feel like you might be a little bit behind. You're not, it's okay. So when do you actually start to look at programs? I usually will tell students, if they're coming to me as juniors, start in the spring of your junior year. If you are currently a senior and you're thinking, it's okay, start now. Right? Start looking at programs. Look at national guides, look at university websites, talk to faculty and program directors. You've made a huge first step by joining us tonight. In fact, joining us tonight means that you get an application fee waiver from me, which you'll hear about sometime in the next day or so when my college coordinator gets those fee codes out. But talk to people, email people, call people, check out websites, ask for more information, ask to meet a current student. Do these types of things to get a sense as to whether or not that program or institution is right for you. And again, I hope it's Lehigh, but if it's not, that's okay. The next question to ask is, are standardized entrance exams necessary? Most institutions right now have waived the need for a GRE or a GMAT. GMAT is the business version of the graduate examination. So GREs are no longer required at most institutions, but if you're an international student, TOEFL or a TOEFL equivalent is oftentimes going to be required. There are some standard changes that are happening across TOEFL examinations, IELTS examinations, and other types of English language proficiency exams. Again, your best bet is to search the web for what those institutions are accepting, or email someone like me to ask, and we're happy to help you navigate what you need to do to be able to apply to the program. Beyond those exams, though, securing recommendation letters is key. You can talk to your advisors, you can talk to your professors, you can talk to other mentors, you can talk to bosses that you've had in engineering-related jobs, but start to ask early. Start to ask now. I usually will start getting requests for recommendation letters right around July from students who are looking to apply to graduate programs. And they continue to roll in basically up until January, usually, with students asking me for a recommendation letter for a program. And most of my colleagues are similar to me. We get a lot of requests every year. And so securing those letters, getting those commitments earlier rather than later is going to help you feel more secure in your application process. But it's also going to give those recommenders a little bit more time to prepare the best letter that they can for you. So then your application essay, right? What is your story? What are your long-term goals? And really, what is your purpose? So if you're a student who's looking to transition fields, right? If you want to move from, again, let's say mechanical engineering into computer science, in your application essay, you're going to want to point out kind of what your motivation is for this transition. right? Because that new department is going to want to sense your commitment to the different fields. So talk about how it will impact your career trajectory. Talk about the background that you've had that helps prepare you for the classes that you may tackle. But more than anything, tell that story. Try to stand out by simply being yourself. It shouldn't actually be too difficult, but ask your mentors, ask your advisors, ask your professors if they'd be willing to read your application essay. It's actually one of the biggest joys I have as a faculty member is helping students kind of navigate this grad school process because I love to read application essays. I really enjoy learning about what student goals are, and I find that the application essay is one of the best ways for students to articulate that in a concise manner. So ask people to read it for you. Throw a party, whatever it is you need to do. Ask your friends, ask your professors, but get someone to read it and help you make it the most compelling that it can be. So here's a rough timeline. Again, don't stress too much. It's not that you're behind, it's that we probably should offer these more than once a year. So if you are interested in research, hopefully you're already doing some research. If you're not, again, that's okay, but maybe try to get your feet a little bit wet over the next several months to at least make sure that a research career is something that you truly want to pursue. If you're looking at master's programs, course-based programs, again, right now you should be focused on securing recommendation letters. That goes for PhD programs as well. If you haven't already started to secure those, please start doing that like in about an hour, okay? For research-based degrees, start connecting with potential mentors. Email faculty, email the department coordinators that help manage the applications, but try to connect with people at the institution. One of the best ways that you can do that is not just sending an email saying, hey, I'm interested in a PhD, are you accepting people? But rather ask them about their current research. Talk to them, try to get them to understand that you are interested in what they do by demonstrating knowledge of papers that they've written, of current things that may be out there in social media. A lot of faculty today have social media profiles. See if you can check a few out, get to know what they're doing, and ask them about it. This is going to help them want to talk to you in a way that just simply asking if they have open positions may not. Then you've got to start the application process. This can be rather time consuming. Most students will apply to at least 4 programs. Some will apply to upwards of 12 to 15. I think the most number of letters I ever put out in a year for a single student was 20. And that felt like a lot. But the student very much wanted to keep their options open. That application essay will likely need to be slightly tailored for each one of the different institutions. So this is going to take some time. So carve out the time that you need. Thanksgiving break is a great time to do this in terms of if you're in a US-based institution, but try to carve out the time late October through about December 1st to get those applications in before rolling admissions begin. Right. So then after that, what do you expect? Some institutions, especially for master's degrees, within about 2 weeks, you might know the answer as to whether or not you're accepted, waitlisted, or declined. Others are going to take a little bit longer. So it depends on whether the program has a rolling admissions timeframe. Some programs will only look at all applications on a certain date. That date should be pretty obvious, again, in their internet profile. If it's not, ask. Other programs will begin to admit students on a rolling basis, again, based on a date that hopefully is publicized. If it's not, ask. If you haven't heard anything after several weeks and your application has been complete, ask. Again, Applications go into systems. Sometimes those systems can feel like black holes. If you're feeling a little bit insecure about it, simply ask someone at the institution, and we're usually happy to give you an answer. For some programs, you'll be asked to interview. Okay, so for some master's programs, those interviews will be over Zoom. For many PhD programs, those interviews will be on campus. Here's a couple of things to note about PhD interviews. One, the institution should offer to pay for your travel. If they are inviting you to interview on their campus as a PhD student, they should also be offering to reimburse you for travel expenses. Hopefully that's the case. If they don't, I would strongly question whether or not that institution is right for you. If the answer to that is yes, then by all means, go ahead and travel without the promise of reimbursement. But if you are at all wondering whether or not that institution is right, it may be best to skip that interview. Now, this largely applies to students who are domestic. Some institutions will also invite international students to travel, but with Zoom being so prolific across all of our worlds right now, you may be asked to simply do a Zoom interview. If that's the case, ask for a lab tour, ask to meet other students that are in the lab that you might be joining, but make sure that that interview is not just you and a single person kind of talking through your goals, but make sure you're getting a good feel for the institution that you might be selecting. You may also be putting in more applications at this time if you're beginning to realize that maybe your first set of choices weren't quite right for you. And a lot of master's programs will continue to accept applications, in some cases all the way through the summer for a fall start. We usually will cut off application acceptance sometime in April here at Lehigh for both summer start as well as fall start programs. But if you realize that you're really interested, let us know, and we can usually push the application through on a different timeline. Right, so how to stand out? Again, be authentic, be yourself. I cannot stress this enough. People really want to know who you are and why you want to do something in their institution. Highlight your fit for the program in your essay. Again, if you're changing fields, highlight how the original field has inspired you to pursue a new field. Connect with faculty, connect with coordinators. See if you can talk to as many students as possible at the institution you hope to join. Those students are going to tell you a lot about what to expect, and that may help you narrow down your choices, because believe it or not, you'll probably have more than one choice for your graduate program. Provide your letter writers with sufficient information to write a compelling letter. Every time I'm asked for a letter, I ask for usually 3 things. 1, current resume. 2, copy of the application, essay, and 3, a meeting. I will want to sit down with most students and kind of talk through what their goals are so that I can properly structure my letter to be the most reflective of who you are as a student, who you are as a future engineer. And then also, of course, grades and scores, right? So again, with the GRE not being as important right now, that's less critical, but your grades are still pretty important. So try not to get senioritis in your last 2 semesters. Try not to slack off in those final courses, but highlight any inconsistencies in your academic record in your application essay. We will typically look more closely at the last 2 years of study than we will your first 2 years. Now, we do look at the whole record, but those last 2 years are very important, especially if your first year may have been, again, a little less than stellar. Funding opportunities, again, we talked a little bit about this. Graduate assistance fellowships from the school or faculty member, these are available. There are fellowships and grants that you can apply for. A couple of the fellowships that are out there include the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. There are equivalent types of fellowships at the different agencies that exist within our government structure. There are also financial aid opportunities in the form of loans, as well as a few grants, but also company-sponsored opportunities. Again, if you're not sure if a graduate degree is right for you at this moment, think about going to work for a couple of years and taking advantage of that type of benefit. There's also a path that is maybe less known, but there's the MD PhD path, which can provide a quote unquote free path towards an MD and a PhD. It's a very long path. If this is something that you're interested in, please be talking to a medical school advisor as soon as possible. This is a tough path, and it's a path that does require quite a bit of advanced planning. So I have another question related to whether or not doing research with faculty is extremely important when applying to graduate school. So it can be, it is not imperative. It is something that we look for. I usually will look to see if a student has experienced any type of research, but I have taken students in my lab with no research experience at all. Partly because I see it as an opportunity to train a student in the philosophy of the lab that I operate, but also because I like to see students receive opportunities to pursue an advanced education if that's what they want to do. So talk to a potential mentor, talk to the faculty you might be interested in working in, and see what would potentially increase your chances of being accepted into that program. So it is important. That is not a universal hard and fast rule. We take students all the time who've not done research as undergrads. But there's a lot of resources out there. Current students, talk to grad directors, talk to your faculty, talk to grad life offices at different universities. They're all going to give you good advice on, again, taking this next step in your education. So I did want to throw in the required list of different programs that we offer here. We have a wide variety of programs, lots of which have different types of master's degrees that are embedded within them. We also have a number of professional programs that can be done somewhat online or offer just unique interdisciplinary ideas that you may not find elsewhere. But I really wanted to provide all of our guests tonight the opportunity to hear some perspectives from some of our current students. So I'm actually going to stop my share here, and I'm going to just start with Zen. So Zen, from what I understand, you received both a master's degree and a PhD from Lehigh. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of why you chose Lehigh University and what your application process was like?
Thank you, Serena. As a international student, I'm from China, so I'm talk more about the international student perspective. So I choose to be a master student because I want to go further for my academic study. But I'm not quite sure should I go as a PhD student, because being a PhD student is a big decision. You need to pay in 3 or 5 more years to pursue your career, academic career. So I decided to start as a master student of science, and Lehigh is a great option. It's settled in the small town, but very close to the big cities like New York City, Philadelphia. And first of all, I just check in the ECE homepage, and I learn about the faculty, the stuff there, learn more about their research area. And they're happen to have a professor, which is my advisor now, has the field area I'm interested in. That is why the main reason I chose Lehigh. So for preparing this application, since I attend undergraduate like research program. So I asking for the recommendation letter from my advisor on the undergraduate, and I also attend like 2 internship during the summer when I was a undergraduate student. So I also asked for the recommendation letter from my mentors of the project. And I would say, for me, being a master's student first is a good choice. So that 2 years in Lehigh, like firstly, helped me broaden my horizon about what the academic life is going to be. And that solid my will to be a PhD student in the future.
All right. So Ethan, right, you're a master's student in mechanical engineering. You happen to have stayed at Lehigh from your bachelor's degree, but what kind of prompted you to pursue that next step in your education?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me staying for a master's degree was kind of separating myself from people who just have a bachelor's degree. So just having that kind of extra credential distinction on my resume to help me out in kind of my future goals. Additionally, another kind of the other big factor was the fact that I'd worked with my advisor as an undergraduate. So just knowing the research group I was going into, and I think Professor Jedlicka mentioned it a bit earlier, but the success of the alumni in particular in my advisor's research group was really good. So he has students that are all across the country at like top engineering places, and that really kind of piqued my interest. Like, oh, I want to work with him. He actually reached out to me and provided me with a few projects. I'm like, oh, here are some really cool ones. So that's kind of how I got the process started, and I've been enjoying it so far. So.
All right. So Colin, so again, you kind of came from an institution close to Lehigh, but actually you've decided to change fields of study from your bachelor's degree to your PhD. So do you want to talk a little bit about your application process and kind of how you positioned yourself to switch from, a science field into an engineering field?
So, I guess what started everything was I did an internship over at Santa Fe. It was the summer of my junior year going into my senior year. And by the end of the internship, I was pretty confident that I didn't want, that's not what I wanted for insert number of years. I didn't want to go and work immediately out of undergrad in an office environment. It was okay, but it wasn't for me. So then I started kind of looking into graduate programs. And by the end, I guess by the beginning of my senior year, at this point, I was 2.5 years in for research. I had quite a bit of experience at this point, and I had it across a couple of different projects. So I was pretty confident that I didn't want to just go into a science PhD, because I didn't want, I wasn't interested in just finding new information for the sake of finding it and then being done with it. I wanted something that was kind of I could take the information that I find or that other people have found and start applying it and looking at how you can kind of use that for, I guess, for lack of a better term, cooler things. I don't really have super in-depth motivation. It was just oh, if it's cool, I'll try it. So I really wanted something that was more interdisciplinary, because for reference, I've done biochemistry research, I've done physics research, I've done just regular chem research, I've done bio research. I've been kind of in and out of a bunch of different areas. And it was never I was never just interested in sticking with one road and kind of walking down it. It was always 2 steps this way, 3 steps that way. A lot of, all right, I want to try this. So I ended up kind of finding the bioengineering PhD program at Lehigh. I actually emailed Dr. Jedlicka to meet with her. And it was pretty late too. It was in November. So it was early November, late October. But as far as grad school application process goes, pretty late. So I met with her, and I don't know, I liked what she had to say, and I ended up like seeing the application through, and here I am.
Yeah, and full disclosure, Colin does happen to work in my lab now. So he didn't just meet with me, but he also secured a position, with one of the faculty here. So a couple of things I think that are really important to note here. If you start the process late, that's okay. Connect with people, right? Because I think frustrating but amazing thing especially about graduate school is that funding opportunities never seem to align with an academic year, right? Grants will come in April or in June or in October. And all of a sudden that faculty member is like, I need a student because I have this grant and I need to get this work done. And it's never too late, right? So connect with people. If you find an interesting opportunity, if you see research that intrigues you, talk to them and don't feel like it's too late in the process. It may be, but it never hurts to ask. All right, so my next question for all of our students, and I'm going to start with you, Ethan. So how have you found the transition from being an undergraduate student to a graduate student?
I haven't found it to be too different, and part of that might be just because I went from a Lehigh undergrad to a Lehigh grad. So it hasn't been a whole lot. I guess the biggest thing is it seems like there's a lot less lecture in class actually, and there's like a more kind of a recitation style in class, which I like. Additionally, a big change has been class size. So even in like your senior level electives here at Lehigh, you're at 20, 30 students for the most part in mechanical engineering. But I've had classes that were like 4 or 5 students for grad school. And that's just incredible being able to kind of have that relationship with your professor. And it's honestly to the point where like they can just look at your face and see if you're confused or following along, which is really great to have. So I think that's kind of elevated the kind of experience, which I've really enjoyed. But in terms of content, I don't think it's a whole like that big of a step up, but there definitely is kind of some more difficult stuff that you're going to tackle.
Yeah, and sometimes when you change institutions, you'll find that again the content piece may be different. They may be assuming that you've come in with certain backgrounds, certain classes. Is oftentimes what we assume is that our differential equations class is the same as every differential equations class that's offered across the entire world. And that's not a true fact by any stretch of the imagination. So, staying at your undergraduate institution, may help in terms of that kind of prerequisite need structure. But trust me when I say that as a graduate student, your professors, they do want to help. And because of class sizes, which are small at most institutions at the graduate level, faculty are going to know when you're confused and are going to be willing to help because they want to see you succeed. You've taken this next really big step and narrowed yourself into a different path. And because of that, it's easier for us to help you be successful. So Colin, how have you found the transition?
I don't know, it's kind of been like different. I joined at the absolute height of a pandemic when we got the Zoom University. So like the online classes for me have been pretty tough. Being able to like stay focused and be disciplined enough to like be at my desk and be like, all right, we're doing work has been pretty challenging. But also on top of that, like I came from just like a biochemistry background. So I didn't have a lot of the math classes that a lot of like the engineering students had. And for I think it's all of the engineering PhD programs at Lehigh, they have a required course called Engineering 452. And it's basically like I guess, all the math they want you to know, just like shoved in there. And it's fast. Like I don't think it's necessarily like harder than anything that you've done. Like I took linear algebra and differential equations here at Lehigh too. And in terms of content, it's kind of like it's what you'd expect, but the pace is like pretty ridiculous. Like we've gone through an entire semester of linear and like 4 lectures, and then we're like running into differential equations, and it's like, all right. So I mean, definitely the time management portion has been interesting.
Well, and I do hear a lot of students talk about, time management, right? As you have transitioned from undergraduate, where your days are largely structured because you are taking a large number of classes, you are in class for certain periods. There can be some structure there that helps you manage your time. In graduate school, oftentimes your days are less structured in that you are taking fewer classes overall. You are largely probably going to be in a lab or working on an independent project, and that requires different time management than you might have achieved as an undergraduate student. But another important thing that Colin noted is the kind of overcoming what could be considered academic gaps in your previous training. So if you're looking to change fields, it may be that the program asks you to take a couple of classes to prepare you for a graduate class in their field. These are perfectly reasonable and actually not terribly uncommon requests, and are probably really good for you to, again, make that transition into those more advanced classes that can be at a really fast pace if you come from a different academic environment. So Zen, right? Moving from, again, being an international student and making this transition, how have you found it?
First of all, I totally agree with you what you said, like the different time management thing. As a international student in the application season, you need to prepare a lot. Like you need to prepare, like during my year, which is 2016, you still need to prepare GRE test. It is quite overwhelming, right? And you still need to prepare your language test, which is TOEFL for the US universities. And being a junior and senior student, you have a lot of like higher level classes you need to attend. So during the undergraduate, during that time, you need to have the ability to deal with multitask time management, preparing the language, preparing the GRE test, preparing, and you also need the good grades of your courses, right? So GPA is quite important for the application. But when I came to Lehigh as a master student, I found it is like I have fewer classes. I only have like 2 required classes and 1 like my interested classes to attend. But that makes you have a lot of more time to dig out your academic interests. Like for me, the good thing is Lehigh offering like small group classes. So small classes, like Ethan said, is only have like less than 10 people or around 10 people. So you have a lot of time communicate with the professor on the class. You can digging out a problem for a long time, and they are so willing to help you. And the rest time I used is to like I look through the papers, the research about my advisor, because I found his research area is suit my interest in. So I read a lot of his research and papers. I need to learn more about what he's doing right now, and so it made me can talk with him with his research, right? So if you want to go through for the go further for the PhD, I think it's a better way to start a connection with your like mentors in the future. Yeah, I think you have more time, but you need to figure out how did you make use of these times. Thank you.
How to use it the most productively.
That is true.
Which I can argue we all struggle with sometimes. We all get caught in the vortex of puppy videos on YouTube, or whatever your particular fascination is with respect to random YouTube videos. So again, the time management piece that trying to make the best use of your time as a graduate student is, again, really important to your success. But there is one additional thing that I want to note that I don't think we addressed earlier, and that is the question of, do you need to have a master's degree before you move on to a PhD? This is a very nuanced question with lots of different answers. The answer, it depends on the program, right? It depends on the advisor, sometimes even within the program. Some programs are going to pretty much expect you to have a master's degree before you move into the PhD side of the program. Others will take you directly as a PhD student. And so we've got two examples here. Colin moved directly into a PhD program. Zen did a master's degree and then a PhD. And Ethan, I'm not sure if your future holds a PhD. Ethan is saying.
Don't think so.
Right. But, again, those are decisions that we all have to make, for ourselves in the best interest of our career goals. So what kind of careers can you expect to have, right? Leaving with a master's degree in engineering. The job titles are going to be maybe somewhat different than job titles that you would see as an undergraduate student. Your starting salary is probably going to be pretty, slightly above what you would see as an undergraduate student. But the key is that usually a master's degree sets you up for research, development, and design types of positions more frequently than you're going to get with just a bachelor's degree. In addition, it opens up opportunities down the line at a faster pace. If you talk to most employers, they're going to tell you that a master's degree is going to allow you to advance in the company more rapidly than a student with just a bachelor's degree. It opens up different doors, new types of doors, and faster doors. PhD, it opens up a lot of research opportunities, whether you want to do R&D within a company, R&D within the government, R&D as an independent investigator. It opens up all of those different types of research doors. Things to focus on as a PhD student, though: publications. You've got to get the research done so that you can publish, because those publications are your collateral to move into the next phase of your career. In addition, having a good relationship with your advisor is going to help you with whatever that next step happens to be, right? So Ethan is probably going to get a job with an amazing company because of all of the alumni that came out of his advisor's lab, and the fact that Ethan works hard, probably going to get a good recommendation from that advisor. Similar with Zen and Colin, depending on what career path you want to take. Again, publications and your advisor recommendation are still going to be very, very important. Anyhow, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. If there are questions that I did not get to, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Shoot me a message. Happy to talk further, happy to talk one-on-one. All of the programs here at Lehigh, we're all accepting PhD applications as well as master's degree applications. If you saw something that captured your interest, let me know. I will be providing application fee waivers for all of the students who've joined us tonight. And I'm looking forward to seeing those applications come in. So I do have a question about, how do I rate my career path as a faculty member and administrator at Lehigh? Well, that's a loaded question. So I took my current job as an administrator in July of 2020. I'm just going to let everybody think about that one for a second, right? So academics in the middle of the biggest crisis that academia has faced in decades. It's been a good time. No, I'm only kind of joking. I've been at Lehigh now for 13 years. So my own background, I did my bachelor's degree at Kansas State. I did my PhD at Purdue. I took 2 years between those 2 degrees to find myself. Honestly, it was because I did not know how to apply to graduate school. As I was leaving my bachelor's degree, one of my friends said to me, so I got into Georgia Tech, University of Washington, Notre Dame, where are you going to graduate school? And I looked at her and I'm like, what do you mean graduate school? I'm done with school. Turns out I didn't actually know that my advisors in graduate school had PhDs and that there was an entire path that one could take to become a university professor. No one had ever talked to me about that. Everyone just assumed I was going to go be a design engineer. So I took a couple years, worked in an academic lab, kind of figured out the type of research that I was interested in. And that's when I decided to go to grad school. And so I emailed my old academic advisor, my old department chair, and I said, where should I apply? And he said, Purdue, Purdue, Purdue. So I applied to Purdue. I don't recommend only applying to one school. Apply to more than one school, unless you're applying to your home institution, in which case one school is probably sufficient because we know you. I got lucky, I got into Purdue, but when I was finishing my PhD at Purdue, I had the opportunity to apply for the job here. And I did it. I applied for a number of different faculty positions, got offers from a number of different institutions. I chose Lehigh because it offered me an opportunity to blend material science and bioengineering in a way that felt really natural. And so for 13 years, I've been doing that. In terms of, how I rate my career path, my academic backgrounds, right, doing my PhD with my advisor at Purdue probably helped a little bit in terms of moving directly into a faculty position. I did not do a postdoc. But in terms of how fit I feel at Lehigh for my job, I've been pretty happy. There are bumps in the road, right? There are always bumps in the road, but I can't imagine being anywhere else. So I have a question, what is a postdoc? That's a great question. So after a PhD, to move into an academic position, to move into an assistant professorship or a tenure track job, many fields require students to have additional research training. This comes in the form of a postdoctoral fellowship. So it is a paid position that you will do maybe at your institution you did a PhD at, but most likely at a different institution. So that different institution provides you with a different network, a different set of research skills, another opportunity to publish. So most of my colleagues did postdoctoral fellowships at lots of different places. Some of them did international postdocs, some of them did postdocs at different institutions. But usually it's a 1 to about 3 year experience where your goal is to publish more, expand your network, and build out your CV to be competitive for a faculty position. Faculty positions are hard to get. There's a lot of applications for any single faculty position out there. For most of the positions that we run, we get a couple hundred applications, and we're usually hiring one person. So having a great record of publication, having those mentors behind you who support your application, that's really key. So that's what a postdoc is and what a postdoc is for. All right. Well, again, I'm going to thank everyone. for joining us. I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening. And again, please feel free to email me with any follow-up questions or requests for one-on-one conversations, and I will follow up with all of you. Thank you to Colin, Zen, Ethan. I appreciate your time this evening. And I hope that all of you get some good sleep tonight as you either prepare for exams or think about what on earth you have to do tomorrow in the lab. So have a wonderful evening.